They say history is written by the victors, but what if the truth was buried with the fallen? Every secret leaves a trace, if you know where to look. This is The Broken Truth, decoding history, one broadcast at a time. The Broken Truth podcast, where history meets conspiracy. Every case tells a story, every story hides a lie. You know, when I sat down and planned season 1 of the Broken Truth podcast, I didn't think it would turn into what it did. I thought it would be a collection of stories, important stories, dark stories, forgotten stories, but stories all the same. But the deeper we went, the more I realized something. Every episode this season is connected, not by time, not by culture, not by topic, but by pattern. A pattern of secrecy, a pattern of silence, a pattern of power that moves behind the curtain. And when you start to recognize those patterns, not just in the Illuminati or MKUltra or Project Bluebeam, not just in Skinwalker Ranch or Majestic 12 or Operation Paperclip, but across all of them, you start to realize something uncomfortable. Modern conspiracy thinking didn't appear out of thin air. It was built by history. Tonight, we're not telling a new story. Tonight, we're looking back at everything we covered and asking, what did season 1 actually reveal? And what does it say about the world we live in today? This is the season 1 finale. This is the framework. Welcome back to the Broken Truth podcast. I'm your host, Garrett, and tonight I want to do something different, something I haven't done all season. I want to talk directly to you. Not as an investigator, not as a narrator, not as someone guiding you through declassified documents or historical timelines, but as someone who's been on the same journey as you for the past several months, digging, reading, questioning, and exposing the patterns that shape our understanding of the world. Tonight is not about one story. It's about why these stories matter together. Tonight, we pull the camera all the way back, far enough to see the entire map, far enough to understand why each episode was chosen, far enough to understand why these topics have shaped the culture of conspiracy, skepticism, and alternative thinking for generations. Whether you're new to this world or you've been questioning the official story your whole life, tonight will make everything make sense. Why these stories? Before we go episode by episode, I want to answer the question I know some of you have asked. Why these stories? Why did season 1 include this particular list, from the Illuminati to high jump to pharmaceuticals to alpha-gal syndrome? Because each one represents a pillar, a foundational block, a psychological trigger, a historical turning point that made millions of people stop trusting institutions, governments, and the information they were being fed. These stories didn't create conspiracy culture. They explained it. They gave people the reason to question narrative. Let me break down how this season was designed. Illuminati and Freemasons, origin of hidden power. MKUltra, Mockingbird, Paperclip, Tuskegee were government deception proven true. JFK, Executive Order 1111-0, 9/11 was national trauma and broken trust. Skinwalker Ranch, Majestic 12, and Stargate were otherworldly possibilities. 3-Eye Atlas, Bluebeam, HAARP, and High Jump were military power and engineered reality. Pharmaceuticals and alpha-gal were health, control, and biological influence. Mountain Weather was a shadow government structure. When you put these together, you get the entire blueprint of why millions of people today no longer believe the first version of any major event. Season 1 wasn't a collection of episodes. Season 1 was a syllabus, a course in the history of suspicion. And tonight, I want to walk through that history with you, conversationally, transparently, and in the same tone I'd use if we were sitting down at a table together. So let's start where everything starts. Hidden power. The beginning. Secret societies and the fear of invisible authority. The Illuminati. When people hear Illuminati, they think of pyramids, dollar bills, hand signs, celebrities, and coded symbolism. But the real story, the one we opened the season with, is much more important. The Bavarian Illuminati represents the moment history realized that small groups of highly ideological individuals could influence society from behind the curtain. They weren't magical. They weren't supernatural. They weren't everywhere. But they were organized. They were intelligent. They were strategic. And their existence taught the public something powerful. If a small group could influence governments in the 1700s, why couldn't hidden groups influence power today? Whether the Illuminati continued or not isn't the point. The point is that they introduced the world to the idea of covert social engineering. The idea that change doesn't always come from the ballot box. Sometimes it comes from back row. The Freemasons. Then we layered in the Freemasons. Not because they're inherently conspiratorial, but because they created something even more influential. Symbolic power. Think about it. The square and compass, the all-seeing eye, rituals, degrees, initiation, brotherhood, influence among elites. When people see symbols on buildings, currency, or national monuments, their mind goes straight to who built this, who influenced this. What does this symbol really represent? The Masons became the first modern example of power baked into architecture, symbols, and institutions. Together, the Illuminati and Freemasons didn't just shape conspiracy theories. They shaped the language and psychology of hidden power. They taught people to look deeper, to question surface appearances, to wonder who sits behind the scenes. Everything else in Season 1 stands on this foundation. The US government's dark files that broke public trust. This was the center of your season, the part where history stops being abstract and becomes personal. Because at this point in the season, we stop talking about secret societies and start talking about something much harder to dismiss: the US government's own track record of deception. Let's go down the list. MKUltra. MKUltra is the anchor story of why people don't trust official explanations anymore. The CIA. Drugged citizens, ran illegal experiments, destroyed records, manipulated mental states, used hospitals and colleges as test beds. And for decades, they denied it. This wasn't a theory, it wasn't speculation, and it wasn't a fringe idea. This was real. And when the public learned how deep MKUltra went, how psychologically dark it truly was, the message became clear. If the government is willing to do this in secret, what else would they hide? MKUltra permanently rewired American trust. Operation Mockingbird. Then you have Mockingbird, the moment the public realized the news can be a weapon. Journalists on payroll, stories shaped by intelligence agencies, narratives pushed for political advantage. Mockingbird taught people that information can be manipulated, perception can be engineered. What you see may not be organic. And once you understand that, you never consume media the same way again. Operation Paperclip. Paperclip added another layer. The ethical line is flexible when power is at stake. The US imported Nazi scientists, including SS officers, not because it was moral, but because it was useful. It told the public, national security overrides transparency, power justifies secrecy, and that becomes the psychological root of modern conspiratorial thinking. The Tuskegee deception. Tuskegee was the nail in the coffin. MKUltra could be dismissed by some as Cold War madness. Mockingbird could be brushed off as media shaping. Paperclip could be rationalized as a necessary evil. But Tuskegee? Tuskegee was unforgivable. Doctors and government officials lied to black men, denied treatment, watched them suffer, let them die, studied the progression of disease, refused to stop even after cures existed. And they did it for 40 years. If you want to understand why people distrust the medical establishment today, pharmaceuticals to vaccines to new illnesses, you cannot ignore Tuskegee. It permanently broke something, not just trust, faith. And then there's Northwoods, the plan that crossed the final line. False flag operations targeting American civilians, to stage attacks, to blame another country, to justify war. It was rejected, but the fact it was even drafted proved to the public that unthinkable plans are not off limits behind closed doors. When you combine these episodes, MKUltra, Mockingbird, Paperclip, Tuskegee, Northwoods, you get a complete psychological profile of the US government in the public imagination. Secretive, manipulative, amoral, pragmatic, and willing to lie openly when needed. This became the heart of Season 1, and for good reason. These episodes explain why millions of people today question everything. Not because they're delusional, but because they've learned from history. National trauma when the official story breaks. Up to this point in the season's reflection, we've looked at secret societies, intelligence projects, and government operations that happened behind closed doors. But the next cluster of episodes in your Season 1 list is different. These stories weren't hidden in a vault. They weren't buried in top secret documents. They weren't whispered about by insiders. These were public events, moments so massive they carved deep emotional scars across the nation and the world. And here's the key. National trauma is one of the strongest engines of conspiracy thinking, because when an event is big enough, shocking enough, and complex enough, the official explanation always feels too small to hold it. And when the official explanation is also incomplete, you get an entire culture of questioning that lasts generations. Let's walk through the 3 pillars of national trauma that shaped modern alternative thinking. The JFK assassination, Executive Order 11110, September 11th, 2001. Each one contributed differently, and each one left a crack in America's trust. The JFK assassination, the birth of the modern American conspiracy. There are only a handful of moments in American history where time splits in half, before and after, and the JFK assassination is one of them. 1950s America trusted their leaders. They trusted the media, they trusted institutions, they trusted the presidency. Then Dealey Plaza happened, and the result wasn't just grief, it was confusion. Too many witnesses, too many angles, too many contradictions, too many sealed files, too many deaths of people connected to the case. And then a lone gunman. A simple explanation for a complicated geopolitical moment. The Warren Commission concluded. The public didn't. Not then, not now. The JFK assassination was the first time millions of Americans collectively felt we are not being told the full truth. And that feeling didn't fade. It became generational. It passed down from parent to child like a whispered warning. In fact, more than half of Americans today still do not believe the official story, 60 years later. Why? Because whether intentional or not, something about the story did not add up. And when trust cracks on that large of a scale, it never returns to what it was. The modern culture of questioning, of assuming there's more behind the curtain, begins right here. Executive Order 11110, the fuel poured on the fire. This order is such a fascinating part of this narrative because it sits in a strange space. It is real, it is legal, it is documented, but its meaning is debated. The order itself is simple. JFK signed a directive potentially reducing the Federal Reserve's power to issue currency. Critics argue it's overstated. Alternative thinkers argue it was a direct threat to centralized financial control. Here's the important part. Whether Executive Order 11110 was world-changing or not, people believe it mattered, and that perception shapes conspiracy culture. Think about what JFK represents in the alternative narrative. A president trying to decentralize power, a leader challenging intelligence agencies, a man supposedly threatening entrenched systems, someone removed before those changes took root. This executive order becomes symbolic. Whether or not it was the reason JFK was assassinated, it exists at the intersection of money, power, influence, and secrecy. And in the world of conspiracy history, those intersections are the epicenter of questioning. This order is the perfect example of how vague language, incomplete context, lack of clarity, and extreme national trauma can merge to create a powerful mythos. Not because people are gullible, but because power in America has never been transparent. September 11th, 2001, the day trust died, yet again. If JFK was the birth of modern conspiracy thinking, 9/11 was the rebirth. We don't need to rehash the entire 9/11 episode here. The season already went deep on that. But we need to talk about what 9/11 did to the American psyche. Because 9/11 wasn't just a terrorist attack. It was a psychological earthquake. It was a global trauma. And it was surrounded by irregularities, coincidences, scientific contradictions, intelligence failures, and classified details that created a perfect storm of skepticism. Remember, intelligence agencies admitting missing signals. NORAD timelines changed multiple times. Surveillance footage was withheld. Buildings fell in ways people still dispute. World Trade Center 7 ignited debates that still rage today. New powers were granted without public oversight. Wars began that reshaped entire regions. Whether you believe the official story entirely, partially, or not at all, the effect is undeniable. 9/11 created a generation of people who will never again accept "trust us" from the government. It shattered the illusion that America was all-knowing, all-prepared, and all-protected. And it provided something that Season 1 emphasized again and again. When big events happen, the government doesn't always tell the full truth. Sometimes because they can't, sometimes because they won't. 9/11 planted a seed of global skepticism that still shapes alternative thought today. The other world, when reality itself comes into question. After national trauma comes something equally powerful: the unexplained, the unclassified documents, the phenomena, the sightings, the stories that go beyond politics and into the unknown. Because once you accept that idea, governments can lie, institutions can deceive, intelligence agencies can manipulate, the official story can be incomplete. You naturally start to question the world itself. And that's where episodes like Skinwalker Ranch, Majestic 12, Operation Stargate become essential pieces of this season's framework. These episodes represent something deeper. What if reality is bigger than we've been told? Let's explore how each one contributed to the expansion of alternative thinking. Skinwalker Ranch, the gateway to the paranormal. Skinwalker Ranch is one of those locations that force people to confront a difficult question. Is everything that happens in the world purely physical, or are there layers of reality we don't understand? When you look at Skinwalker Ranch, anomalous creatures, unexplained lights, radiation spikes, electromagnetic distortions, poltergeist-like events, sightings of aircraft not fitting known technology, cattle mutilations with surgical precision, effects on human physiology, testimonies from scientists, soldiers, and intelligence officers, you realize something. This isn't a hoax. This isn't a campfire story. This isn't a my cousin saw something situation. This is a location investigated by NIDS, the US military, the DIA, intelligence contractors, astrophysicists, security specialists. Something is happening there. Something real, something measurable, something not understood. And when people encounter a mystery that defies physics, biology, or logic, they start questioning the limits of reality. Skinwalker Ranch opens the door to that idea. The universe may have layers, dimensions, or entities we do not publicly acknowledge. This becomes one of the psychological gateways into deeper alternative thinking. Majestic 12, the Forbidden Files. Majestic 12 is the perfect example of a theory that sits between the lines of plausibility and secrecy. Are the MJ12 documents real? Were they fabricated by intelligence agencies? Were they a cover operation for something else? The truth is unclear, and that's exactly why they matter. Majestic 12 represents classified committees, secret research, extraterrestrial involvement, compartmentalized knowledge, elite groups operating with no oversight. Even if MJ12 were fabricated, the idea it represents is not. These are things happening in aerospace, intelligence, and defense that the public is not allowed to know. MJ12 feeds into the broader pattern, a secret group overseeing forbidden knowledge. And this is where conspiracy history intersects with existential curiosity. Operation Stargate, Psychic Warfare and the Mind Beyond Matter. This episode is one of the most important in the entire season because it bridges two massive concepts: the idea of undisclosed government projects, the idea that human consciousness has untapped ability. Stargate isn't science fiction. It's declassified. The US government trained psychic spies, explored remote viewing, attempted mind-based intelligence gathering, tried to weaponize perception, spent millions on non-physical warfare. This tells the public two things. The government takes paranormal abilities seriously, even if they deny it publicly. Reality might be far stranger than we've been taught in school. Stargate validates the idea that intuition, consciousness, dimensional perception, psychic phenomena are not just mystical, but potentially measurable. Technology, manipulation, and the military programs that shaped modern fears. Now we moved into the next cluster of Season 1, the highly technological, military-embedded operations that people point to as evidence of engineered reality. These episodes include 3i Atlas, Project Bluebeam, HAARP, Operation High Jump. This is the part of the season where the tone shifts from what are they hiding to what can they do. Because now we're not just dealing with secrecy, cover-ups, deception. We're dealing with capability, the ability to manipulate, perception, the sky, the ionosphere, information, global narratives, remote territories. Let's break these down. 3i Atlas, surveillance before surveillance was probable. 3i Atlas is the shadow ancestor of today's surveillance state. Long before smartphones, social media, and data mining became household concepts, there were classified systems designed to collect data, track signals, monitor communications, map behavioral patterns, predict decision-making. 3i Atlas showed that mass surveillance didn't begin in the 2010s. It began decades earlier, quietly. And this realization fuels modern digital paranoia for a very simple reason. People suspect the technology we see publicly is about 20 to 40 years behind what exists in classified labs. And they're right. 3i Atlas opened people's eyes to that idea. The world is being monitored in ways they never voted for. Project Bluebeam, the power to engineer reality. Project Bluebeam is not just a theory. It's a cultural fear, one rooted in technological advancement. The idea behind Bluebeam is simple but terrifying. The ability to fabricate a global event using technology, whether through holographic projections, psychological manipulation, electromagnetic influence, staggered extraterrestrial threats, engineered religious events. Bluebeam represents the fear that reality can be scripted and people will believe it. Whether Bluebeam is real or a product of Cold War paranoia, the idea of it has shaped alternative thinking for decades. Because when people see advances in AI, deepfakes, holograms, digital media, psychological operations, they remember Bluebeam. And they ask, how much of our reality is manufactured? HAARP, weather waves, and weaponization. HAARP sits in a strange intersection between science and suspicion. On paper, ionospheric research. In practice, capabilities the public doesn't fully understand. People point to HAARP as evidence that weather can be manipulated, communications can be disrupted, signals can influence the atmosphere, global patterns can be engineered. Even if HAARP itself is harmless, the existence proves the infrastructure exists to manipulate nature. HAARP symbolizes the fear of technology that affects the world without democratic oversight. And in conspiracy culture, that fear runs deep. Operation High Jump, Antarctica Secrets and the Unknown Frontier. Operation High Jump is one of those military events that becomes conspiratorial, not because of what we know, but because of what we don't know. The largest U.S. naval operation ever sent to Antarctica, under vague research pretenses, with sudden withdrawal, conflicting testimonies, rumors of underground structures, stories of craft not of this world, a region still heavily restricted today. High Jump taps into the ancient fear of there is something hidden at the edges of the map. Whether that something is lost civilizations, Nazi bases, buried technology, natural anomalies, something non-human is unknown. But the mystery itself fuels belief that the world is not fully mapped, history is not fully revealed, exploration never truly ended. High Jump is the perfect example of how a few missing pages create centuries of speculation. Pharmaceuticals, alpha-gal, and the weaponization of health. Up until now, in this season finale, we've covered secret societies, government deception, national trauma, paranormal programs, and massive military operations. But now we shift into a realm far more personal. Your body, your health, your mind, your biology. Because nothing shapes public fear. Nothing fuels conspiracy thinking more than the belief that the systems meant to heal us may be harming us. And whether intentional or systemic, whether through corruption or incompetence, whether corporate greed or lack of accountability, the episodes in this category sit at the core of one of the biggest conspiracy movements of the modern age, medical distrust. Let's start with the largest and the most controversial, the pharmaceutical industry, when medicine becomes a marketplace. This episode was important for a simple reason. Americans trust doctors, but they don't trust the system behind them, and for good reason. We explored SSRIs, Adderall and stimulant culture, Ozempic and weight loss pharmaceuticals, FDA revolving doors, studies funded by the corporations they benefit, lobbying power, opioid crisis manipulation, overprescription, profit-driven diagnoses, corporate capture, and medical research. And what we found was chilling. The pharmaceutical system is not designed for health, it's designed for revenue. The industry makes more money when people are lifelong patients, depressed, anxious, overweight, dependent, chemically out of balance. And we're not talking about conspiracies, we're talking about legal settlements, court records, congressional testimony, whistleblower reports, internal memos, big pharma marketing strategy. The pharmaceutical industry is one of the most powerful political forces in America. Bigger than energy, bigger than tech, bigger than military contractors. And that power has consequences. It creates the perception and sometimes the reality. that medicine can be weaponized financially. People can be kept sick because it is profitable, and public trust can be manipulated through science that has been purchased. This is why modern health conspiracies explode instantly online. The distrust comes from history, not fantasy. Alpha-Gal syndrome, when the strange becomes biological. Alpha-Gal syndrome is one of the most fascinating and layered episodes in this season because it sits at the border between public health mystery and emerging illness, ecological shift, and food system distribution, genetic impact and unexplained acceleration, and possibly biological intention. People who have never believed in a conspiracy theory in their life find themselves questioning the world when they hear about alpha-gal. Why? Because it feels unnatural. A tick bite, making you allergic to red meat? In a country where the food industry depends heavily on meat production. In a region where cases suddenly exploded with ties to ecological manipulation and theories linking it to bioweapons, gene editing, ecosystem tampering, Lyme disease patterns, unexplained government interest. Whether or not alpha-gal syndrome is engineered isn't the point. The point is that the public already believes the medical system is compromised. So when a strange illness appears with massive economic consequences, the alternative theories write themselves. Alpha-gal opens the door to a larger theme. What else can affect our body without our permission? What else can get inside our biology unnoticed? What else is changing the way humans interact with the environment and each other? This is why health conspiracies spread faster than any other kind. Health is personal. Health is emotional. Health is primal. If the powers that be can influence health, they can influence everything. This is the psychological root of modern medical skepticism. Mountain weather and the shadow government. Earlier in this finale, we talked about hidden societies, government secrets, and classified operations. But mountain weather is different. It's not theoretical, it's not speculative, and it's not debated. Mountain weather is real, fully operational, government ran, funded, staffed, and prepared. But prepared for what? That's what makes it matter. Because mountain weather represents the real-world structure behind one of the most talked about modern ideas, the deep state. Not the political weaponized version, the literal one. Let's break this down. Mountain weather, the continuity of government. During the Cold War, the US government realized something terrifying. A nuclear strike could decapitate the entire leadership of the country within minutes. Congress, the president, the Supreme Court, cabinet members, joint chiefs, key personnel. Gone. No government, no chain of command, no constitutional authority. So the US built something extraordinary. A parallel government. A full command structure, a hidden leadership bunker, a second capital, a shadow administration ready to take over if the primary one is destroyed. That's what Mount Weather is. A self-contained underground city. Dorms, communication centers, command rooms, war rooms, food stores, hydroponics, computers, classified archives. Layers of hardened construction deep inside a mountain. And here's the part that changes everything. The public has no idea who would run America if the government surface fell. Not the president, not the vice president, not the Speaker of the House. Those are public titles. But Mount Weather has its own chain of command, one that has never been publicly released. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is federal policy. Continuity of government is real, active, and legally binding. Mount Weather runs parallel to Washington, D.C., and the public has no vote in who takes charge in an emergency. Why this matters? Mount Weather proves that the government has a Plan B version of itself. It exists underground. It has its own leadership structure. It operates independently of elections. It is prepared to take over instantly. It is completely secret. This single facility validates the foundational fear behind modern conspiracy thinking. There is the government we see and the government that exists. Mount Weather isn't speculative. It's not paranormal. It's not theoretical. It's factual. And once people understand that, once they realize a second government exists behind the surface one, they start to ask bigger questions. What else exists behind the curtain? Who really has power when things fall apart? Are we being governed by more than we're told? Is democracy a presentation or a structure? This is where suspicion becomes systemic. Mount Weather is the hinge point between conspiracy theory and political realism, the framework connecting everything in Season 1. Now that we've walked through secret societies, government deception, national traumas, paranormal programs, military operations, technological manipulation, health influence, a shadow governance, we can finally answer the big question. Why do people today question everything? Why do conspiracy theories exist? Why does alternative thinking spread so rapidly? Because history taught people to question. Season 1 wasn't a collection of stories, it was an anatomy lesson. A breakdown of the psychological, historical, and cultural pillars that built modern distrust. Let me show you the full framework. The 7 pillars of modern conspiracy thinking. Pillar 1, hidden power. Illuminati and Freemasons. The idea that elites coordinate behind the scenes. Pillar 2, government lies and covert operations. MKUltra, Mockingbird, Paperclip, Tuskegee, and Northwood. The proof that governments deceive the public. Pillar 3, broken official narratives. JFK, Executive Order 11110, and 9/11. The moments where explanations collapsed and mistrust exploded. Pillar 4, the other world and forbidden knowledge. Skinwalker Ranch, Majestic 12, and Stargate. The belief that the world is bigger and stranger than what we're told. Pillar 5, technological manipulation. 3-Eye Atlas, Project Bluebeam, HAARP, and High Jump. The fear that reality can be engineered or scripted. Pillar 6, biological influence. Pharmaceuticals and alpha-gal syndrome. The suspicion that health is a battleground of control. Pillar 7, shadow governance. Mount Weather. The recognition that parallel power structures exist behind elected. Together, these pillars create the modern conspiracy worldview. Power lies, manipulates, hides, controls, deceives, and operates in the shadow. People don't believe these things because they're irrational. They believe them because the evidence across history supports these patterns. Season 1 revealed that conspiracy culture isn't fiction. It's the logical conclusion of living in a world where information is filtered, power is hidden, and the truth is often inconvenient. What Season 1 proves about society? Now that we've laid out the 7 pillars, now that we've walked through every episode, every pattern, every historical scar, it's time to address something deeper. Because Season 1 didn't just expose secrets, conspiracies, or declassified programs. Season 1 revealed what kind of society we actually live in. And here's the uncomfortable truth. We live in a world built on controlled narratives, withheld information, and compartmentalized power. This isn't cynicism. This isn't paranoia. This is history. Let me break this down plainly. Institutions protect power, not truth. One of the biggest revelations from this season is that institutions, whether governmental, scientific, medical, or military, do not exist to tell the truth. They exist to maintain stability, preserve authority, protect national interests, manage public perception, control information flow. This truth is secondary, sometimes optional, sometimes strategically withheld. Look at MKUltra, the truth buried for decades. Tuskegee, truth denied while men suffered. Mockingbird, truth manipulated through media. Paperclip, truth overwritten by necessity. 9/11, truth shouted in bureaucracy and contradiction. The pattern is undeniable. Truth is only told when it's convenient. Truth is only revealed when it's safe. Truth is only acknowledged when it no longer threatens power. Traumatic events become permanent fault lines. Every national trauma we covered, JFK, 9/11, even the pharmaceutical crisis, left fractures that still exist today. Because when millions of people witness something that doesn't make sense, when answers feel incomplete, when explanations sound rehearsed or political, suspicion becomes generational. Children inherit their parents' distrust. Communities inherit ancestors' wounds. Society inherits its unresolved mysteries. That's how conspiracy culture forms, not through fantasy, but through unhealed national trauma. The unknown is no longer dismissed. In the past, anything paranormal, anomalous, or unexplained was laughed off. Not anymore. Because this season showed the military takes UFOs seriously. The government funded psychic research. Skinwalker Ranch has measurable anomalies. Documents like Majestic 12 shape defense policy. High jump and Antarctic secrecy raise questions. HAARP proves ionospheric manipulation is real science. We no longer live in a world where the unknown is dismissed. We live in a world where the unknown is investigated behind closed doors. People sense that. People know that. People feel that. It makes them ask, what else exists? What else is hidden? What else is possible? And those questions don't stop. Technology has surpassed public understanding. One of the most chilling realizations of Season 1 is that the public has no idea what technology really exists in classified programs. 3i Atlas alone proves that surveillance capabilities existed decades before the public even knew what data mining meant. Bluebeam raises questions about psychological warfare. HAARP raises questions about atmospheric manipulation. Stargate raises questions about consciousness. High Jump raises questions about unknown craft in the 1940s. Majestic 12 raises questions about reverse engineering. Here's the real truth many people don't want to admit. We don't know what the government knows. We don't know what they can do. We don't know what technology already exists. That uncertainty is fertile ground for alternative thinking. It's not irrational, it's not delusional, it's logical. Because the secrecy is real, the budgets are real, compartmentalization is real. Season 1 simply connects the dots. Modern society is built on hidden layers. When you zoom out far enough, the same way we're doing right now, you begin to see the map. Secret societies, intelligence programs, shadow governance, medical manipulation, technological advancement, unexplained phenomena, classified operations, rewritten histories. This isn't conspiracy. This is infrastructure. This is how power works. This is how nations operate. This is how global influence is maintained. Season 1 wasn't entertainment. It was an X-ray, a full-body scan of how the world actually functions behind the polished surface. And once you see the structure, you can never unsee it. How these stories shape the future. So now the question becomes, what does all of this mean for the future? For society, for culture, for the world your children will grow up in? Season 1 is not about the past. It's about the trajectory these events created. Because history doesn't just shape the present. It shapes the future consciousness of entire generations. Here's what I believe these stories are doing to our future. 1. People are becoming impossible to control. Governments used to rely on secrecy, media control, limited information, controlled narratives, but not anymore. Season 1 proved that. People research, people question, people compare sources, people dig into archives, people spread information instantly. The internet created a population that no longer takes explanations at face value. And the more governments hide, the more the public digs. Suspicion is accelerating, trust is collapsing, awareness is spreading. This is not a fringe phenomenon, it's global. 2. Distrust is becoming policy relevant. Politicians can no longer dismiss conspiracy theories as crazy talk. They can no longer rely on the public's silent obedience. Why? Because millions of people today refuse to accept unexplained wars, trust pharmaceutical giants, believe mass surveillance isn't abused, dismiss UFO disclosures, trust the media's neutrality, pretend shadow governance doesn't exist. Governments will have to adapt to a world where the public demands transparency, and transparency is the enemy of power. This tension will define the next century. 3. Technology will outpace accountability. Everything we covered from Bluebeam to 3i Atlas to HAARP points to a future where technologies evolves faster than oversight. Artificial intelligence, deepfake capability, global surveillance, cognitive warfare, atmospheric manipulation, neural interferences, bioengineering. Technology is no longer a tool, it's a battlefield. And those who control it will shape reality itself. Season 1 wasn't a warning, it was a preview. 4. The paranormal will become mainstream. Skinwalker Ranch, Stargate, Majestic 12. These aren't fringe ideas anymore. They're government-funded investigations. We are heading into a future where physics, consciousness, dimensions, life, intelligence, reality will be understood differently. Science and the paranormal are merging. And once that door opens, it never closes again. 5. People are waking up faster than ever before. This is the most important trend of all. Season 1 revealed that people today question, analyze, investigate, distrust, research, share, listen, challenge. People are more awake, more aware, more alert than any generation before them. The age of silent obedience is over. The age of inquiry is here. Season 1 didn't create this movement. It documented the world that created it. Why millions are awakening now? There's a reason conspiracy culture is exploding right now. It's not random, it's not accidental, it's not just the internet. It's psychological, social, historical, technological, and cultural. Here's why millions are waking up. Information cannot be contained anymore. For all of human history, information was controlled by kings, priests, rulers, empires, governments, corporations. Now, a kid with a laptop can expose something no one was supposed to see. Information flows horizontally, not vertically, and that terrifies the people in charge. People see patterns faster. Past generations saw isolated events. Today's generation sees patterns. MKUltra isn't a standalone incident. It's a part of a pattern. So is Paperclip, so is Tuskegee, so is Northwoods, 9/11, Epstein, censorship, media, and media manipulation. People don't forget anymore. People connect dots. Pattern recognition is the new literacy. Institutions lost their halo. No one believes the media blindly. No one believes politicians unconditionally. No one believes the pharmaceutical industry without scrutiny. No one assumes the government has our best interest. The illusion has shattered. Once trust is broken, it doesn't come back. Whistleblowers became heroes. In the past, whistleblowers were silenced. Today, they trend, publish, have platforms, support, have independent media. Snowden, Assange, Grush, Pentagon contractors, DIA analysts, scientific insiders. Whistleblowers changed the battlefield. The truth is no longer a single voice. There is no longer one source of truth. There are thousands, millions. The truth is now decentralized, distributed, debated, documented, analyzed, recorded, shared, archived. Governments can't keep up. Institutions can't keep up. Corporations can't. The truth is no longer a speech, it's a network. Season 1 revealed the world that made this awakening inevitable. What we've actually uncovered. We've spent this entire season exploring the shadows of history. Secret societies, psychological warfare, government deception, medical manipulation, extraterrestrial secrecy, technological experimentation, shadow governance, unexplained phenomena, natural trauma, and the strange, uncomfortable patterns that connect them. But as we close in on the end of this finale, I want to pull everything together one final time. Because season 1 wasn't about proving any single conspiracy theory true. It wasn't about learning left or right. It wasn't about sensationalism. It wasn't about shock value, nor fear. Season 1 was about something deeper, understanding the origin of distrust. If you want to understand why millions of people question everything today, why they challenge media narratives, why they challenge political explanations, why they challenge pharmaceutical claims, why they challenge historical records, you cannot understand that without understanding the stories we covered this season. This entire season was about showing you. This didn't come from nowhere. Suspicion has a history. Doubt has a lineage. Skepticism has an origin. And that origin story spans centuries. Let's walk through it one final time. We learn that hidden power structures have always existed. We learn that humans instinctively fear power they cannot see. We saw that the government has lied, openly, repeatedly, and strategically. We learned that secrecy isn't a theory, it's a policy. We revisited national traumas that broke public trust. We learned that tragedy creates suspicion and silence creates theory. We confronted the paranormal, the dimensional, and the unexplained. We learned that reality is much bigger and stranger than we are taught. We discovered technology hidden ahead of public knowledge. We learned that capability, not theory, drives fear. We exposed manipulation in medicine and biology. We learned that profit and health don't always align. We uncovered the existence of a literal shadow government. We learned that democracy has an emergency backup, one we never vote for. Season 1 proves something simple, uncomfortable, and undeniable. People don't distrust institutions because they're conspiracy theorists. People distrust institutions because institutions have broken trust over and over again. And when you see the world through that lens, everything starts to make sense. The emotional core of Season 1 and why these stories matter to you. We've spent hours talking about documents, operations, histories, and classified programs. But the heart of this season is not in the data. It's in you. Because these stories shape the world you live in. They shape how you raise your children, how you view your health, how you interpret the news, how you consume information, how you understand society, how you define freedom, how you make decisions, how you evaluate danger, how you question authority, and more importantly, they shape how you see yourself in the world. Let me explain. These stories snap you out of autopilot. Most people go through life believing that the world simply is the way it is. But once you learn about Paperclip, MKUltra, Mockingbird, Tuskegee, hidden operations, classified technologies, shadow government structures, you start questioning the foundation. You stop accepting, you start analyzing, and your worldview expands instantly. These stories give you back your intuition. We're trained from childhood to ignore our instincts. Don't question authority, don't challenge the experts, trust the system, follow the rules, believe the official story. Season 1 reminded you that sometimes your intuition is right. Sometimes the thing that doesn't add up actually does not add up. Sometimes the crazy theory is common sense. Sometimes your suspicion is survival instinct. Sometimes your discomfort is your inner compass. Season 1 didn't teach you to distrust the world. It validated the distrust you already had. These stories return power to the individual. When people believe only in institutions, they become dependent. When people question everything, they become independent. Season 1 gave you permission to think for yourself, analyze for yourself, question for yourself, understand yourself. This is why alternative thinking is powerful. It decentralizes truth. It removes the monopoly from institutions. It removes the illusion from power. It removes the mask from authority. Knowledge becomes a shared weapon. These stories show that you're not crazy. This is the most important one. For years, people who questioned the narrative were dismissed, mocked, censored, banned, shamed, ridiculed. Season 1 proved that you're not alone. Millions of people see the patterns. Millions of people feel the contradictions. Millions of people distrust the institution. And millions of people recognize the inconsistencies. People sense the shadows behind the stage. There is nothing crazy about skepticism. What's crazy is blind trust. Who this season was for. Before we go into the cinematic outro and Season 2 teaser, I want to say something directly to you, the listener. Season 1 was for the person who always felt something was off, never bought the official version, knew there were deeper layers, saw patterns others ignored, felt surrounded by people who never questioned and wondered if they were alone, felt gaslit by institutions, carried doubt like a secret, wanted clarity in the fog. Season 1 was for the person who sees the world differently. The person who knows truth is rarely simple. The person who senses the world behind the world. The person who believes that questioning is a form of courage. You are not alone, you never were, you never will be. The final lesson is Season 1. Before we close, I want to leave you with the single biggest takeaway from everything we covered. Not a theory, not a summary, not a dramatic reveal. Just this. Always question, but never lose your humanity. It's easy to get lost in the shadows. It's easy to become cynical. It's easy to start seeing deception everywhere. And it's easy to start assuming the worst. Easy to believe nothing is what it seems. But the point of learning the truth is not to lose hope. The point is to live with awareness, with eyes open, discernment, and strength. Conspiracies don't define the world. People do. Communities do. Consciousness does. And awareness does. The truth isn't meant to isolate you. It's meant to empower you. Season 1 was about exposing darkness, but not to live in that. It was about understanding it so that you can walk through it. Stepping back from the shadows. As we come to the end of this journey, I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself standing in a long, dimly lit hallway. On each side of you, door after door, episode after episode, each one opening in a different story we explored. The Illuminati, Freemasonry, MKUltra, Operation Paperclip, the Tuskegee Deception, Operation Mockingbird, Project Bluebeam, HAARP, Skinwalker Ranch, Majestic 12, Operation High Jump, 3-Eye Atlas, Stargate, Northwoods, the Pharmaceutical Machine, Alpha Gal, Mount Weather, JFK, 9/11, Executive Order 11110. Each door holds a different piece of the puzzle, a different fragment of truth, a different scar on history, a different moment where trust fractured, where narrative shifted, where reality bent. And now, at the end of the hallway, there's one final door. This finale is that door. So before you open it, before you step into Season 2, I want to leave you with the reflection that ties all of this together. The world behind the world. If you take nothing else from Season 1, take this. The world you live in is layered. It always has been, and always will be. There's the surface world, the politics, the headlines, the speeches, the institutions, the official stories, the curated reality. And then there is the world beneath that. The classified, compartmentalized, hidden, denied, forgotten, buried, forbidden. You don't have to believe every theory. You don't have to chase every rumor. You don't have to assume every institution is corrupt. But you cannot understand the present without understanding the shadows of the past. Season 1 wasn't about proving conspiracies. It was about proving patterns. Patterns of secrecy, control, manipulation, propaganda, engineered narratives, weaponized health, psychological influence, black budget operations, parallel governments, manufactured events, dimensional uncertainty. Technologies decades ahead of the public. These patterns are the framework. They explain why millions of people today question everything. They explain why distrust is spreading. They explain why society feels like it's split in two realities. One reality says, believe the experts, trust the system. The other reality says, look deeper, something's wrong. Season 1 taught you how to see the second reality. Not because you're paranoid, not because you're irrational, not because history, but because history speaks for itself. Before we close this season, I want to talk directly to you. Whoever you are, driving in your car, walking at night, working out, sitting on the couch, listening while you cook, or letting this play while your mind wanders, I want you to understand something. You are not alone in your questions. You are not alone in your doubts. You are not alone in the way you see the world. You are not alone in the feeling that reality is not what it seems. You're not alone in sensing that truth is layered, sometimes hidden, sometimes manipulated, sometimes intentionally obscured. You are part of a global movement of thinkers, people who refuse to sleepwalk through the world, people who refuse to take explanations at face value, people who want answers, not narratives, people who value truth over comfort, people who understand that awareness is the first form of resistance. You are awake, you are present, you're paying attention, and in a world built on distraction, your awareness is a threat. Season 1 wasn't about darkness, it was about illumination. Not the Illuminati, but the act of illuminating the truth. You shine a light by listening, by questioning, by thinking. And that makes you part of something much larger than this show. It makes you part of a collective awakening. Now, let's talk about what comes next. Season 1 was the foundation. Season 2 is the ascent. Season 1 revealed shadow governments, ideological manipulation, classified programs, dimensional mysteries, secret societies, national traumas, covert operations, military secrets, medical deception. Season 2 goes deeper. Because if Season 1 answered the question, how did we get here? Season 2 answered, what's happening now and what's coming next? Here's your Season 2 teaser. The forbidden chapters of history itself. The stories before stories. The civilizations before civilizations. The myths that weren't myths. And the secrets that we rewire the human timeline. Atlantis, Alternative 3, underground civilizations, the ancient global grid, the pre-flood knowledge, humanity's lost epochs, forbidden archaeology, non-human intelligence in ancient cultures, the oldest shadow war on Earth. Season 2 will be darker, heavier, more revealing, and more controversial than anything we've done before. Because once you see the framework, you're ready to see the entire structure. So here we are, at the end of Season 1, the end of the beginning. You didn't just listen to a podcast. You didn't just hear stories. You didn't just explore history. You uncovered the foundation of a worldview that millions of people share, but few can explain. Now you can explain it. Now you can see the patterns. Now you can recognize the playbook. You can spot the manipulation. You can sense the shifts. You can decode the narratives. You can understand the silence behind the headlines. Season 1 was about understanding those shadows. Season 2 is about navigating. And I want to personally thank you, not as the host, not as the narrator, but as someone walking this path, for choosing awareness over comfort, for choosing truth over illusion, for choosing questions over obedience, for choosing the broken truth. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for your time, your energy, your curiosity, your critical thinking. Thank you for listening. This is the end of Season 1, the end of the first chapter. But this journey, this search for truth, this unraveling of the world behind you, it's only just the beginning. This has been Season 1 of the Broken Truth Podcast, a season that peeled back the layers of power, of history, of deception, of secrecy, to reveal the framework of the world we really live in. My name is Garrett Green, and I want to personally invite you to join me next season as we step deeper into the shadows than we've ever gone before. If you're ready for the truth behind the systems, the truth behind the history, the truth behind the world that you think you know, then stay with us. Follow the show, share it with someone who needs it, leave a review, join the inner circle, and prepare yourself, because Season 2 is coming. And nothing, Absolutely nothing will be the same after we're done. I can't even begin to imagine the immense growth that we've seen over season 1, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to produce this show. Please share your thoughts of season 1 and your recommendations that you may have for season 2. If you guys have any topics that you want covered, please message me on Instagram at the Broken Truth Podcast. I can always release a video that doesn't necessarily correlate with season 2, but it's just because you want it covered, and I'm completely cool with that. Thank you for all of your followings on social media, your followings on the podcast, your reviews, your feedback. I'm super active on Instagram, so DM me at any time and I'll get back to you. This is the Broken Truth Podcast, and the truth is just getting started.
In a world built on hidden histories and half-truths, we've only just begun to peel back the layers. Because what you've heard tonight was never meant to be known, but you were meant to find it. If you're ready to go deeper, leave us a review, comment your thoughts, share this episode, and step inside the archives. Join the inner circle, where the real evidence is kept. This is the broken truth, because the truth isn't whole, it's broken.